I think just how quickly things can go south, and that, as soon as you start to switch off, that's when it comes back to bite you in the arse. So we had an experience in the river on our first day where we thought, this is a super wide river. The amount of water needed to bring this river up is mental. There's no way it's going to come up this high. And there's this beautiful beach and it's such a nice camp spot, but it was only 2 or 3 meters up from the river. And we thought, we'll be absolutely fine. Like, there's no way it's going to rain that much. And it did.
Hello and welcome to this World Extreme Medicine podcast. My name is Deb Swann. I'm an advanced clinical practitioner in emergency medicine, a pre-hospital practitioner, expedition medic and member of the World Extreme Medicine faculty. Today I'm joined by Jonah Morgan. Jonah is a fifth-year medical student at Dundee University. He has recently returned from a British University Kayak Expedition to Kalimantan, Borneo. Jonah and his team spent 6 weeks deep within the rainforest navigating undescended rivers and overcame numerous challenges to return with tales of daring do. And that's why we have Jonah on our podcast today. Jonah, it's lovely to see you. Thank you very much for taking the time to speak to us today.
No worries. Thanks so much for having me.
Let's get started, first of all, with hearing bit more about you and how you became involved with this particular expedition.
Yeah, for sure. So I was lucky enough that I've been kayaking since I was about 12 years old. And I think kayaking as a sport introduces you to a lot of different amazing opportunities, especially kind of when you start getting into the more exciting end of kayaking. You spend a lot of time camping in some pretty special places, and you end up in some pretty amazing places and some gorges and some amazing, quite difficult places to get to. And I think that's a kind of a good warm up. And it also kind of introduces you to some quite interesting people. And those are the kind of opportunities from there that allow you to get into these kind of amazing things. The Buke expedition itself has been running since like 1990, and it's kind of designed to allow university boaters like me who are at a certain level that they can do these kind of expeditions, but because they're at uni, they're not got the time to do it. But it gives them opportunity to actually plan and execute their own expedition, just to give them opportunity to kind of experience it. So it's been something that I've wanted to do since I was about 12. I remember watching one of the films released by the expedition and thinking that's what I want to do, because I know I want to go to uni and I definitely want to do some expedition kayaking. So it's kind of always been on my radar, and I was lucky enough to go to a uni that's got such good, exposure to the outdoors that I was able to push my paddling to a level where I felt comfortable to apply. And that's really how I got into it, is just knowing that, the right people and just kind of slowly over time building up the skills needed to do it. It's not something that kind of fell into my lap. It's something that I kind of worked for.
And what is the British University Kayak Expedition about, really? So you called it Buke. What is involved in that, and how do you get picked to do an expedition?
Well, the only way I can really describe Buke now is it's kind of like a big family. So all the old teams, we kind of meet up and discuss things. And it's basically, you start off by applying for a written application. So you kind of write down your resume of kind of rivers you've done, places you've been, kind of, so I went to the Alps when I was about 18, 19. I spent 4 or 5 weeks in the Alps driving around, camping and kayaking. So it's that kind of thing. You just talk about kind of experiences you've had on the river and off the river, any skills that you might be able to bring to the table. So obviously some of the skills that I could bring were more the medical side of things, but we've got people on the team who are amazing with ropes and amazing climbers and that kind of thing. So everyone kind of brings their own skills, and everyone can kayak who applies. So it's kind of what else you bring to the table. So that's what people are looking for. So, all kayakers love photography. So, if you're a good photographer, that kind of thing, that always gives you extra points. So there's that kind of written application, and then the previous team members and some of the more professional kayakers in the UK kind of get around, they discuss, and they kind of choose like 20, 25 people that they think should go to a selection weekend. And then those people meet up at a selection weekend, and it's in a little bothy in North Wales. And from there, the older members set up scenarios and run kind of scenarios like, you've got a paddler trapped in the river unconscious. How are you going to deal with this? And you break up into teams and you deal with like an unconscious patient, pulling them from the river safely, that kind of thing. Or one of the ones we did was, you've come across a gorge you can't kayak across. How are you going to get yourself and all the kit across? So you had to set up ropes and anchors, that kind of thing, to move your boats safely across the river. And then the rest of the weekend is spent orienteering on the hills, or depending on the river levels. If the river levels are good, we then go kayaking. And it's just about kind of seeing who you'd want to kayak with, because a lot of these expeditions isn't actually about like, oh, this person's amazing as a kayaker. I'd much rather have someone who's a good kayaker, but also got skills on the side, and is also someone that I can get along with and that I trust on the river. So that's what's really important, is actually just getting to know your team members really well. And from there, you know, there's 20 people, you each get 6 votes, and the people with the 6 most votes get put on the team. So that was the kind of, the weekend is a really good way to kind of meet people that you would want to go on an expedition with. And then that's why it's important, because you need to be able to realize that you haven't got any kind of characters that might cause friction, any egos that might get in the way, that kind of thing. That's how you get selected, yeah.
And did you know the team that you ended up being selected with, did you know anyone previously on your team?
So I knew one of them, Aaron. He goes to the same, he's actually a second year medic at Dundee, so I knew him, so I partnered with him quite a lot. And the kayaking community is quite small, so I knew of people on the team, but I'd never really interacted with them before. So it was actually a really good way, even if you didn't make it onto the team, it's an amazing way to meet some like-minded people that you just want to go paddling with anyway. So I only knew Aaron, and I knew of some people, but now, you know, after spending 6 weeks with each other, we're like best friends. I couldn't ask for better people to have gone on it with. I was very lucky.
With the selection, it sounds like a very rigorous selection, and it's in Buke's best interest to make sure that you guys, as you go off, that you are capable of looking after yourselves. And it sounds like it's the sort of a selection process, like you said. It's where you can make new friends and connections, and probably just enjoy the process anyway, whether you get on or not. Do you choose the expedition, or is that already, we've decided Buke is going to go to Borneo, off you go? How does that work?
Yeah, so part of the written application is you have to do your own research onto where you want to go. So everyone comes to that weekend with where they would like to go. And involving that, you have to kind of map some rivers, work out some basic logistics and basic prices, that kind of thing. And then one of the evenings is spent discussing where you would like to go and taking photos. And one of the sessions that they run in the evening is mapping and reading rivers from Google Earth, because that's sometimes the only way you can actually see what rivers are going to work. So they would pick pictures and screenshots from previous expeditions, and then they would discuss, like, would you actually think this river runs? What would you discuss? Any egress points? How would you get there? How would you not? And then they would show you actually whether it was runnable or not. And sometimes they'd be like, stuff that looks really runnable from Google Earth is actually just a huge box in gorge that is impossible. So there's some really good sessions that run. But yeah, everyone kind of comes with their own expedition plan, and then it kind of gets whittled down to top 3, and then the team then choose from those top 3 where they would like to go. I think our top 3 were Central Kalimantan in Borneo, Tajikistan, and then Cameroon. But we kind of whittled it down because Cameroon's full of hippos that eat people, and the glacial season in Tajikistan wasn't quite right.
Okay, so Borneo it is then.
Yeah.
How do you then go from, okay, so we're going to Borneo. This is the purpose of the expedition. Was that already decided at that point, or did that evolve from, okay, the location is going to be Borneo, now what do we do?
The expedition trials take place in October, and then there is the expedition doesn't take place till the summer. So we've got quite a lot of time to plan. And our original plan was actually East Kalimantan in Borneo, and it was meant to be like a 12-day descent of this river. But then actually when we were doing research, we'd found out that some Russians had done it before in a raft, and that they had a lot of trouble with crocodiles and alligators. And we were also thinking about the logistics of food, because we're quite limited by the amount of space that we have in the back of our boats. So we didn't think we could actually manage a 12-day expedition, or if we could, it'd be pushing it in terms of the food would be probably running out, and then we'd be not a lot of cushion. So we decided to actually move it to Central Kalimantan, and in that way we just kind of picked a river basin that we wanted to do, and then from there we decided we'll just go to that river basin and we'll just explore as much as possible. So it kind of a bit more flexible. We had a central base we kind of wanted to base ourselves out of, and then the plan was just to explore that whole river basin.
Was it a loose plan of explore the river basin, or was there certain goals that you wanted to achieve in that time you were there?
Yeah, so we picked out from Google Earth like 3 rivers that we really, really wanted to do that looked like they had a good river profile in terms of like how many kilometers it descends. how many meters, sorry, it descends per kilometer. So that kind of thing can tell you. So in like steeper, lower volume rivers, you know, like a 30 meters per kilometer to 20 meters per kilometer, it's a pretty good gradient. That's probably what you get in the UK and some of the smaller rivers. And then obviously the bigger the volume, you probably want less gradient. So that kind of is a rough ballpark figure of what you were looking for. And we found some rivers that looked amazing. So we kind of had those figured out, and they were the Bibaut, the Joloi and the Busang. Those were 3 rivers we really wanted to do. And those were kind of our main targets, and anything else we found along the way would just be like bonuses.
So tell me about the planning process. Where did you start? Did you reach out to people, reach out to experts? Do you get sponsorship?
Yeah.
It sounds like a massive task. And actually, you said that you get selected in October to go in summer, but actually those months whiz by, plus you're a full-time student and a medical student at that. Tell me about the planning process.
Yeah, so luckily there's 6 of us, so we were able to kind of divide and conquer a little bit. So 3 of us were on kind of logistics and planning, and 2 of us were on sponsors, and then someone was just dedicated to media. And I went for media because I enjoy photography, and I had my finals coming up. So I was like, I'm not going to be able to dedicate as much time as probably needed to kind of do a lot of the planning. But everyone else kind of smashed out of the ballpark with the planning. And luckily there's a lot of like kayak expeditions that have been to similar regions like the Philippines. So it's not the same, but it's similar kind of ecosystems. And there have been some expeditions to Malaysia and Borneo. So we were able to kind of reach out to a lot of like expert knowledge and people that were able to give us some great hints and tricks and that kind of thing. And then they kind of gave us numbers of people to call on the ground, that kind of thing. So local fixers, that kind of thing, that would just give us information on, you know, how easy is it to get transport around that area, what kind of issues we might have with locals, that kind of thing. And then in terms of what I did on the medical side, I just kind of reached out to as many experts as possible. I was on the phone call to a great doctor called Matt, who's an Australian doctor who speaks Indonesian and spent a lot of time in Borneo. And I was kind of asking him like what kind of things I should expect out there, what are the kind of key things to prepare for. And I just kind of reached out to as many people who know much more than I do as possible, because I'm obviously new to this. So I wanted to be going in there as prepared as possible. And it kind of skips out the learning phase because I'd be able to pick up knowledge from them. And I'd much rather go into the jungle with borrowed knowledge than having to learn it the hard way.
Yes, learning it the hard way isn't fun. It's sometimes type 2 fun, sometimes type 3 fun. So gaining as much knowledge as possible is great. And local fixers, you can't really do anything without having fixers on board. So yeah, that's fantastic. So in terms of the medical expertise that you got, or the advice rather that you got from knowledgeable people, what were you prepared for, and was it different in country? Do you feel that you were perfectly prepared, or was there a lot that you wish you'd known before you went?
Yeah. So for the issues that we had out there, I felt like I was prepared because we were lucky enough that because we'd done such good planning and our risk assessments were so good, we didn't actually encounter too many issues. So I felt like everything I had covered everything we needed. But I also had some stuff that if stuff had gone a bit more south, then I would have been covered for it. But I think the main thing that I was taught was that just prevention is key. So it was just like applying Savlon and some antiseptic stuff to every single cut, graze, leech bite that you get. Because, in the UK, if you get a cut or a graze, it's not really too much of an issue. You'd probably just leave it. But in the jungle, it just festers, and like a tiny cut can become an expedition ending incident. So I was super grateful for that. We were on it, every single cut we got, we put Savlon on it. So we didn't have any issues with that until the very end. And we were lucky enough that, any cuts or grazes people got, I just gave a good scrub with betadine and like dressed it and changed the dressing, twice a day, and then let it to air in the evening, that kind of thing. So it was just about being on top of it and not letting things slide. And so, the information that I gathered from people was just like amazing. So, we were so far out there that, these kind of things could quickly become expedition ending. So I was very grateful for that. And I'm very grateful that we didn't have anything major, because it would quickly it could go south so quickly. You're so far out of the way that anything, even if you were the most prepared person in the world, all your plans just go out the window as soon as something goes wrong.
I think, yeah, you're right. The prevention is the key, and your planning is key to that as well. And actually educating all the members on the team on how to look after themselves, but also having you there as the nominated medic. I'm assuming you were the nominated medic. Is really useful, because the jungle, it's a completely different environment, and the jungle wants to kill you. Is my assessment of jungles. And I think I saw that you'd written somewhere that the jungle doesn't give you a second chance, and I think that is absolutely 100% correct. So things like wound care and getting on top of that is really important. And how did you manage foot care? Because that, obviously, I know you're kayaking, but also, looking after your feet in the jungle is a nightmare. How did you approach that?
Yeah, that was something we were so aware of, because everyone had been, into the jungle, whether it was South America, that kind of thing, had always said, your foot care is so important. And we're spending our time in and out of water all the time. We've got shoes on that are wet. I think the one thing to say is you just got to commit to being wet during the day and then try and dry during the evening. I think if you try and piddle paddle around it, you're just going to end up changing socks all the time. So we just committed to having one pair of neoprene socks that were wet during the day and then having a dry pair for the evening. And we were super on it as soon as we got out our boats and we were set up for the camp. So, we'd go up, we'd set our boats up, and then we'd set up camp. We'd go up into the jungle about 10 meters up from the river. We'd clear out an area, we'd stamp it all down to make sure there's nothing, and we'd set up our hammocks while we're in our wet kit, because you get so sweaty doing all of that. So if you dried yourself, you just end up drenched again. So we took our time setting up our camp, making sure everything was sorted, and then we'd go back down to the river, wash off, and then dry our feet just using a towel. And we had a lot of talc as well. So it was just towel it dry, and then a lot of talc, and then, applying some antifungal stuff to in between your toes and under your toenails, and then just letting your feet dry in some open shoes. And then just doing everything super slowly after that. Just getting up in the evening to go up to your hammock, just walking ridiculously slowly to just try and stop yourself from getting too sweaty.
That's really interesting. And how did you make your decisions on what kit to carry? Not just your medical kit, but actually for your day-to-day living. How did you wheedle out the stuff that was less important to just have those essentials?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it was a bit of learning on the job. So this is all of our first expeditions in terms of the rainforest. None of us had ever been to a rainforest before, but we'd done a lot of, multi-day kayaking before, so we knew roughly what we needed, but it's just kind of tailoring it slightly to more of that environment. So that the first river trip we did, we all took raincoats and things like that and some other stuff. And then we realized that we all had kags, which are those kind of waterproof tops you use for kayaking. We realized they're as good as coats, so that's just losing some weight, that kind of thing. It's just about trimming down the weight. And we got much better at working out how long we'd be on the river. So for example, the first river we did, we actually prepared to be on the river for 5 days, but it only took us 2. I think that's because we realized we were much faster than we thought. The rivers have so much volume in them that even the long flat sections we were doing, these 30, 40k flat sections, were actually not taking us very long. So we just got much better at working out how long we'd need to be on the water for. So then that means we can bring less food and less, that kind of thing. We always brought 1 or 2 days more food than we would need, because you never know what's going to happen. We might get flash flooded and have to wait for the river to drop. So we always had some more food, but we were able to kind of tailor down how much food we needed, that kind of thing. So it was just learning on the job, really. That's what the beauty of the Kayak Expedition is, that everyone's learning together. So it's just a great experience to be part of.
And tell me, what did you learn? What were the major things that have stuck in your mind at this stage? Because you're not long back. When did you get back?
About a week and a half ago.
Okay, so it's really not that long ago at all. What are the key things at the moment in your mind that you learned?
So apart from the prevention thing, just making sure that you're on top of it and that, anything is better to prevent it than let things slide. I think just how quickly things can go south, and that, as soon as you start to switch off, that's when it comes back to bite you in the arse. So we had an experience in the river on our first day where we thought, it's a super wide river. The amount of water needed to bring this river up is mental. There's no way it's going to come up this high, and there's this beautiful beach, and it's such a nice camp spot, but it was only 2 or 3 meters up from the river, and we thought, we'll be absolutely fine. Like, there's no way it's going to rain that much, and it did. I remember we woke up in the middle of the night, and the river was rising, like, so quickly, quite scarily, so we had to kind of, it was torrential rain, and we had to move our whole camp up another 5 or 6 meters during the night in a thunderstorm about 3 or 4 in the morning. We were all getting absolutely destroyed by, the insects. The ants were horrendous. And a few of our members also had diarrhea and vomiting as well. So it was a pretty good introduction to the jungle and for some of our members. And then we had to move it up. It was that kind of thing that we thought we knew better than the jungle, and we didn't, and we got taught it. But we were lucky enough that we got taught it, and we were there to tell the tale afterwards. And from then on, we were like, we'd go way higher up, we'd take on more of our time, and then we actually went and did the same river again, and we looked at where we camped. Yeah, and that was after like 5 weeks, and we just could not believe how idiotic we were to think that was high enough off the river. So it's that kind of thing. It's just not switching off. Kayaking's a good sport that it always teaches you never to switch off, because you never know what might happen on the river, but it's a new environment, and you kind of get a bit cocky and you think, oh, it's fine. But not switching off is super important when there isn't that hospital 2 hours away, or the help when you need it that quickly.
Did you have any low moments? 6 weeks on in a rainforest it's exciting, but it's not always going to be an amazing experience. You're going to be tired. You're going to be wet all of the time. You're going to have near misses, like losing all of your kit in a flash flood. Were there any low moments, and how did you power through those times?
Yeah, so kayaking in a sport is quite good because it introduces that feeling of being uncomfortable from quite early on, because it involves, bivvying in cold. I've bivvied in public toilets. I've bivvied, on the side of roads and ditches. So it kind of introduces that feeling of being uncomfortable and kind of functioning through it from quite an early age. And that kind of helps you build that mental fortitude that you sometimes need. And it kind of gives you these tricks and tips. But even still, the first night when I was wet in my hammock after the storm, I was like, oh, this is quite exciting. There's definitely no better places to be uncomfortable and wet in a hammock, because we hadn't learned how to do our hammocks properly. But I was like, you know what? This beats being cold and wet in Scotland, because it was warm. It's that kind of thing. But there was definitely some low moments, just carrying a lot of kit on your shoulder for a long time is pretty sore and uncomfortable. And we unfortunately lost quite a close friend to ours kayaking in Norway, and that was a super difficult time in the jungle, because he unfortunately drowned. So that was super difficult to deal with as a group, because we all knew him quite well. And it's the kind of thing that you're descending these huge rapids that have massive consequences if they go wrong, and you've got kind of extra thoughts playing on your mind that you don't need. So it's kind of a super difficult time for all of us, but it kind of brought us all together. We were able to talk about it and process it, and it was quite nice that we were all there together, and we were able to kind of share good memories. But it definitely brought an extra dynamic of, it kind of brings home how real the sport that we do is, because at the extreme end of an extreme sport, there's the margins for error aren't massive, but that was definitely one of the more difficult things we had to deal with, was just that kind of mental side of things, the what ifs and the maybes and that kind of thing.
How did you deal with that? How did you get through? Was there one particular member of the team who was the morale booster, or were you all fairly equal in that task?
I think everyone deals with like those struggles a little bit differently. You've got people that are just constantly smiling and constantly laughing, and no matter what they're doing, they're always happy. And you're like, what on earth? How are you doing that? I'm personally someone that just likes to have a little grumble, but I'd never actually mean anything by it. I just grumble for grumbling's sake, and people just laugh at it and they find it quite funny. So everyone deals with it in their own way. And I think each of them have their own benefits, because the person that grumbles like me, at least everyone knows exactly how they're feeling and they can deal with that. But the persistently smiley person, actually, I noticed, presents his own issues, because he was so smiley all the time that he would also just grumble. He wouldn't grumble at all. So he would be dealing with some quite serious stuff and wouldn't tell us. And it kind of came back to haunt him in the end, because he actually had a really serious knee infection for the last 3 days of our trip. He'd got bitten by a bug, and he hadn't told anyone about it, despite the fact that throughout the whole trip I'd been so on it by saying like, guys, you know, you've got any aches, pains, bites, cuts, just let me know so we can at least keep on top of it. And I think it was a prime example of just switching off because you think you've made it and you're home and dry. So, you know, we were sat at the main base back in the city we were staying in, just, you know, 2 days from flying home. And he just tells me that he hasn't slept at night. And I was like, what on earth's going on here? Why haven't you slept? And this is the first time I've actually heard him sound like, you know, upset and disgruntled the whole trip. So that was immediately like a red flag. And I just lifted up his trouser leg and his knee was twice the size of the other one. And he had like erythema all the way down to his mid shin. I touched it and it was so hot. I was like, we're just going straight to the hospital. Like, we're not dealing with this by ourselves. We're just going straight to the hospital. And it's that kind of thing that, you know, if he'd have been like me or someone and they grumbled it, we'd have been able to, you know, catch it straight away. But someone that, you know, is so persistently happy that they can just, you know, power on through anything. There are, you know, the risks and benefits for each thing, that kind of thing. But yeah, he was amazing. Matt was such a good morale booster. He was always laughing, even, you know, when he was struggling with D&V really badly, he'd be like, what an epic place, you know, to be doing this. So it's that kind of thing. It's like amazing to see, but also there are some drawbacks to it.
Yeah, that's really interesting from a human factors perspective, actually, for the person who wears their heart on their sleeve to the person who is perhaps seen as the group, the morale booster who actually was having some difficulties. And it wasn't until he was perhaps tired and in pain that you noticed it. That's really interesting. And you're going to get that with all sorts of group dynamics. Each person brings their own way of coping, don't they? With the downs, it doesn't sound like it sounds like you had some low moments, but did you get positives from those times? Did you see the silver lining to any of these low moments, or, you know, if there's you've got stuck somewhere or there's a certain descent that you couldn't make?
Yeah, for sure. We you know, every kind of down moment or things that go wrong is just a lesson to be learned. You know, we didn't actually manage to make it to one of our main rivers, the Bibout, simply because of human factors. You know, it was a huge trek to get there. It was like a 5-6 hour 4x4 drive and then a 2 or 3 hour riverboat drive to get to this village that was about halfway. And from there, we were meant to catch motorized canoes up to this river. But the locals just weren't having it. They weren't allowing us to put our boats on it. And they were also going to charge us an absolute fortune to do so. For context, it cost us about 60 million Indonesian rupees to do the 4 weeks prior to that. And they wanted 40 million rupees to just take us upstream for about 40K. So that's a huge amount of money that we couldn't afford. And we only found that out once we were there because, you know, although there's little towns and villages, there's no communication between them. There's not any signal. So we didn't actually have any way of knowing if any of these descents were possible until we got there. So we had to kind of bite the bullet each time and just say, well, let's hope it works out. And this time it didn't. And we had to kind of bite the bullet and go, you know what, we can't afford this. So we're going to have to paddle downstream. And then there was the extra layer that we'd taken all our fuel up with us to that river. So we didn't have to buy it further at land because it's more expensive. And the locals in the night moved all our fuel across to their boats. And so they were keeping it. And you can't really argue with a whole village, you know, 12, 14 hours from the next major city. So we had to leave about like 300 quid's worth of fuel in this village. So that was a low moment and we were all quite angry at that. And then to kind of cherry on the cake, someone decided to steal my sandals as well. So I was in a pretty foul mood that morning when I found out. But it, you know, it just taught us, you know, the extra complications of, you know, some of the most difficult parts of any expedition we found were actually the human factors, dealing with the locals, dealing with translators, that kind of thing. So we kind of away from it. We're annoyed we didn't make the river, but actually it meant we could do this amazing descent, this 150 kilometer descent of this amazing section of river called the 1,000 Rapids section. It was just meant we got 3 days in pristine rainforest, paddling some incredible whitewater. So, you know, it led to different things and we didn't get the river we wanted, but it meant we could do this. And we learned that actually, you know, that things go wrong and you have to not quite so trusting. I think we were quite naive at the beginning. You know, we gave a lump sum to our guides expecting it would cover the whole cost and it didn't. And there were kind of communication issues from both sides that meant that we didn't realize we were massively over budget until we were told that we were like a significant amount of money over budget. And so that kind of thing that we were quite naive in giving them a lump sum of money and expecting this. But then there should have been communication both sides. So it's we learned a lot and there's a lot to take away for next time, you know, learning that, you know, perhaps keeping your cards closer to your chest, going 50-50, that kind of thing. So there was some annoying moments, but, you know, you can't really be too annoyed when you're paddling through pristine rainforest and, you know, the trees are forming kind of a cathedral over you and there are birds and monkeys flying around. So you just kind of go, take the blows and roll with them.
That's an excellent attitude to have. Is there anything that you wish you'd known before you went, looking back?
I suppose the one thing is that I think everyone has a little bit of imposter syndrome with these things. They kind of feel like they're not ready for it, that they've not got the mental fortitude to do it. But I think it's the kind of self-belief, and that's what I kind of wish I knew before going, is that actually I can kind of mix there and I can deal with it. Because I think you see a lot of these videos of these amazing adventurers doing things, and you're like, how on earth have they got the mental fortitude to do that and the skills? But what you don't see is kind of the hard work and the hours and years of effort they put in and what level they actually started at. I think these kind of mental fortitude isn't something that you're born with, it's something you kind of develop over time. And, you know, I think it's just by being persistently uncomfortable, you develop this mental fortitude and the ability to push through it. And I think that I need to just get better at like looking back at all the stuff that I have done and realize actually that I can do more. Because that's what I would take away from it. It's just a bit more self-belief that I actually can do these kind of things. And I would say to anyone that, you know, everyone starts at the beginning, and it kind of feels a bit foreboding when you look at how far you might want to go. But actually, when you break it down, there's so much you can do to make it easier.
That's an amazing attitude, and I think you're right. Nobody sees you don't really, you see the successes, but you don't see the multiple failures and the really hard work and the training and that people put into quite a lot of their expeditions, or just efforts that, you know, that they do almost on a daily basis. Some people are really have to put a lot of effort into looking like a swan whilst paddling furiously under
exactly.
the water. You've not been back for long. How has it been coming back from such an epic adventure, apart from getting the flu, which I think is probably understandable considering what you've been through? How has it been so far coming back?
It's slightly odd. It was quite busy because I'm used to just the persistent silence of, or not silence, but, you know, that noise of the jungle. So it's kind of like white noise, but with just insects. That was odd, coming back to like kind of unnatural noises. And the sleep cycle was a bit weird as well, because in the jungle, like, we realized quite quickly that you want to be in bed before it gets dark, because going to bed when it's dark is horrible. You just get absolutely slammed by every insect possible.
Yeah.
And even the moths that don't harm you are super annoying when they're flying in your face. Yeah. So like you're in bed for like 6 o'clock, 5:30, and then you're getting up at sunrise. So you're in bed for like 12 hours, which feels very odd because you're trying to sleep. So that felt very odd, kind of unsyncing from the sun, because you're so used to like living by the sun that when you come back to the UK and it's like bed at 11, you're like, whoa, this is a bit strange. But yeah, I think we luckily, because it took us so long to come back from the jungle, it took us like 5 days of traveling to get back to the coast again. There was a bit of acclimatization there, like we moved to a slightly bigger town and then a slightly bigger town. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't like a culture shock again. It was just getting used to the amount of people. That was the weird thing. And I think socially as well was a bit difficult, because I'm just used to speaking to the same 6 people for like 5 weeks. And then suddenly I've got to like speak to loads of people. I'm like, wow, my social battery is a little bit low.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it'll probably take a little while to adapt, but I think perhaps the decompression stages that you went through for, you know, to make your way back to civilization is probably a good thing, rather than finding a way to move from jungle straight to city back to the UK. Otherwise, I think it probably would have been a bit too much for you. So what's next for you? Have you got anything else expedition planned, or is it concentrating on completing medical school? What's your next adventure?
I'm not quite sure yet. I've got some plans. I want to go. Unfortunately, our elective has to be in the UK, but that then gives me 4 weeks to go and do something. And I kind of want to go hiking in Central Asia by myself for a bit. The culture looks amazing. Not anything crazy because I'm by myself, but just some of the foothills I'd really love to go and just hike around by myself for a while. That's kind of on my radar. In terms of, I kind of want to finish medical school and then do as much kayaking as possible while I'm working during FY1, FY2, and just kind of building a bit more of a resume. So I have plans. I think a lot of students are limited by money and not time. So we've got a lot of time, but not a lot of money. So I'm looking forward to having a bit more funds to be able to afford some like courses and things like that. So I want to get my kind of winter mountaineering courses sorted. I want to join a local climbing club, try and get much better at my knots and my ropes, because that was something I identified on the kind of trip that I need to get better at. So my plan is just to try and learn as many skills as possible and trying to get as much time out on the mountains as possible. I'd really like to do kind of like, there's an advanced whitewater safety course, which I want to do, which is just amazing, right? Kind of similar to mountain rescue kind of skills you learn about, like rescuing victims from bottom of gorges, that kind of thing. Just useful skills to have, I think. It's just about trying to build like a resume up, just to make myself as useful in any expedition as possible. I do plan on doing an FY3 as well, just to try and locum and then make time to do. I'd love to do the postgrad diploma in Exped Med and Wilderness at Glasgow. That's my plan, is to do that and then do as many of the WEMS courses as possible as well. I just think trying to build myself up as much as possible. I've got my eye on a few of them that I would like to do, but I just need the funds to be able to do them.
Yeah. It sounds like an excellent plan to have over the next few years, just to build that up. And I'm sure you will do fantastically well. It's been a really interesting insight into your expedition, and the fact that it was your first expedition and the planning that you did, and actually the things that you learned from it. I think our listeners will get a lot from that. So thank you very much for taking the time to let us into that world. I'm really jealous. I need to not be so jealous. I like to end my podcast with asking 3 questions. They're fairly simple questions. So the first one is, what was the last book that you read?
What was the last book that I read? Oh, yeah, it was a book on Tamerlane, who was this Central Asian conqueror who kind of created this empire and created these amazing cities in Central Asia, like Samarkand. Because I want to go to Central Asia, so I was reading up about the local culture. So that was the last book that I read. It was on Tamerlane or Timur. Yeah, it was a really good book, actually. I'm a bit of a history nerd, I won't lie. So that's fine.
I think I fully approve. That's absolutely fine. I don't know if I'm actually going to know the answer to this question now. I'm not sure how you're going to answer this. What's your favourite travel destination?
What's my favourite travel destination?
Is it where you've
difficult.
Just been,
That's difficult.
or would you say that it was somewhere else? I know it's a difficult question. That's why I ask it.
I don't really have a destination. I have like my ideal holiday is any like of the extreme kind of, environments. I really want to go to some amazing mountains. I really want to go hiking through some deserts. I would say the Arctic is super high up on my list. I really want to spend some time in the Antarctic or the Arctic Circle. So basically anywhere that's an adventure, I really want to go. I am not a sit on the beach person. My worst holiday idea, I hate the mix of sun, sand and sun cream. It's not a good mix for me. So sitting on a beach and reading is not ideal.
So we won't find you on a sun lounger with a Jackie Collins novel then?
No, you'll find me hopefully up a mountain somewhere or in a desert.
Okay, all right. And name one of your top 10 favourite movies.
Top 10 favourite movies?
Yeah,
that's a difficult one.
I know.
I like Gladiator. I don't know why. My dad loves it. I always just watch it with my dad. So I like Gladiator. I try and get everyone I know to watch it, and most of them don't like it, but I love it.
Really? Oh, it's a great movie.
Yeah, I think it's the accents that do people in.
Yeah, well, it doesn't matter. It's a nice story of good versus evil, and I think it's a good movie. I approve of that one. That's very good. Well done, Jonah.
Thank you very much.
You're more than welcome. Listen, it's been absolutely fantastic to meet you and hear about your fantastic expedition. Is there anywhere that our listeners can find out more about this? Is there any social media websites that you can point them to?
Yeah, so there's the British University Kayak Expedition has a Wikipedia page as well. So that has hopefully all of the previous expeditions, information on where they were, what they did, where they went. And they should be able to go all the way back to, I'm not sure when, but there should be a lot of them on there. There's also the Buke British University Kayak Expedition Instagram page and Facebook. And those have both got kind of up to date. And we're also releasing a film as well at some point. So if you go on our Instagram page, you'll be able to keep up to date on that film. It's just in the process of being finished and edited, and that kind of explores the whole journey. I couldn't really reveal too much about our expedition because, the film, we've got sponsors that need appeasing, so we've got a film, that kind of thing coming out.
Absolutely. Totally understand that. That's really exciting. Okay, we will put the links to that in the show notes. So yeah, we'll get those from you. After the recording. Fantastic. Listen, it's been really great to meet you and potentially see you at the WEM conference.
Hopefully.
Excellent. Brilliant. Thanks very much, Jonah.
Thanks very much for having me. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to the episode. Please feel free to rate, review and subscribe on whichever platform you're listening to. Please also head over to the World Extreme Medicine website where you can find more engaging content on extreme medicine webinars and indeed the collection of courses from our global network, including humanitarian, disaster relief, expedition, space, military, tactical and performance medicine. Thanks again.